welcome everyone. We're gonna give it a couple more seconds and then we'll get started.
Behind my pride there lives me that knows humility. Inside my voice there is a soul, and in my soul there is a voice. But I've been too afraid to make a choice, cause I'm scared of the things that I might be missing.
All right, let's go ahead and just get started. And as more folks kind of hop on, we'll join them. But welcome to today's webinar. My name is Kat Menendez. I am the Commission Liaison here at the California Student Aid Commission. I am Suti Quechuan of my grandfather of the Andes, and my indigenous name is Agdihi Awuhu. And I'm so honored to be here with you all today as we hold space for an important conversation. So with that, let's just go ahead and get started. Next slide. All right, so meeting logistics and reminder. So this webinar is for 60 minutes. If you have any questions, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. We do have staff standing by ready to respond. This meeting is going to be recorded. And why is it recorded? Well, for you, to ensure that this webinar is a resource for you to use, will be on the YouTube channel as well as the website. If you need to use the captions, there's a toggle switch on the side to turn it on, off, and on. And finally, we encourage you to join us on our website or on our social media to follow us, to keep up to date with events that were happening, kind of like these now, and events in the future. So please feel free to go to the next slide, please. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to start with a welcome and opening. We're going to do some context setting about the financial aid landscape, but we won't spend too much time there because the focus of this webinar is in dialogue. And so we do have some amazing panelists here that are going to share some stories. We'll have a Native student story, and then we'll have a healing circle from leaders. And then we'll go and close off with some resources and some pathways. Next slide. And so we're leading with intention. On behalf of the Executive Director, Dr. Daisy Gonzalez, and the California Student Aid Commission, we welcome you deeply, and thank you for joining us in this webinar today. Dr. Gonzalez sends her sincerest appreciation for your presence and partnership in this important conversation. We acknowledge that our work today exists solely on the basis of the strength, resilience, and leadership of Native communities across generations. Our goal today is to uplift those pathways and the people creating them. So students remain at the center of every decision we make, a value Dr. Gonzalez carries as an unapologetic advocate for student success, equitable access for higher education. She often reminds us that creating opportunity means more than just opening doors. It means ensuring students feel seen, supported, and have the resources needed to thrive. So in this space, in this virtual space, we are intentionally accepting a healing energy for storytelling, for reflection, collective learning, and for respect. So today's conversation is gonna reflect that commitment. So we're now going to hear, and I love to see all of y'all sharing where you're coming from in the chat. Please feel free to continue doing that. But we're now gonna go to the next slide, and we're gonna hear from our very own Commissioner Valladolid.
My name is David Valladolid, and I currently serve on the commission, California Student Aid Commission. When people ask me my ancestry, I let them know that my father came from Zamora, Michoacan, and my mother was born here in California. But on her side, her father was from Mexico, and her mother was from a Tongva Indian tribe in the San Gabriel, LA area. And so then when I was experiencing the racism and discrimination that occurred during my youthful days, I ended up getting drafted and sent to Vietnam. When I survived combat in Vietnam and wounded twice, I came home and I decided that I never wanted again have somebody be able to control my life and tell me what to do and how to do it. So I went on to college and got all the education I could get. Met some incredible people throughout my course and I think every human being needs to have that opportunity to get a good quality education so they can be instrumental in deciding the justice and the importance of their communities and their families and their lives.
Thank you, Commissioner Valladolid. We're gonna go on to the next slide. And he brings up a pretty good point. The access to education is a pathway towards a completely different career where we will feel empowered rather than feeling used. And on average, Native students face a gap between their total college costs and the aid they truly receive, forcing many to take out more loans, work more hours, or forego higher education altogether. So we find that even some recipients of certain specific grants from these communities still face nearly up to $10,000 in unmet need on average. Nearly 75% of Indigenous students go unaccounted for on the federal level, and 72% of those students will run out of money after their first 6 months of college, where 30% of those students report inadequate financial support due to limited access to culturally responsive services, which affects things like persistence or even decision making of where they will go to college. So seeing these quantitative perspectives shared here shows that there's a clear gap. Going on to the next slide. It shows that there's a clear gap. It's not about the lack of potential, but the lack of access and support. And I remember when I first went to college, the first time really feeling supported and seen was when I went to my Native Resource Center. And I know I explained that these quantitative perspectives may be saddening, but it is a conversation, a humble conversation that needs to be had because we do need more data capacity and accuracy and more funding. But we're going to frame this in a way that's strength-based because what we do have is culture, relationships, community, voice. And the reason why I felt the most comfortable when I first went to college at that Native Resource Center was because we have love, something that we've had across generations. And so we're going to go right into the most important part of this webinar. Next slide. And it's part of today's conversation is hearing directly from the panelists who will share their stories. Because while policies and programs do matter, lived experiences truly teaches us what works. Next slide. And so I'm going to welcome Xochitl, Ariana, and Atzil to come and join. Yes. And so I'm honored to present such Indigenous knowledge found in our student panel today. So we're going to start with each of them presenting themselves. Oh, yay, we have Ariana being able to join. So we do have these 3 student panels that will be joining. I'm going to have them first introduce themselves with their names, a little bit about themselves, their hometowns, and what brought them here. And while they're sharing about themselves, I want them to think a little bit about what this means being rooted in strength and their educational journey. And so we'll go ahead and start with Xochitl Valencia, and then we'll go in the order of the slides.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Inepo Xochitl. I am Yaki. I am currently a student at American River College, where I study sociology. But in the fall, I will be at Sac State with a major in sociology and a minor in Native Studies. I also currently work as a clerk in the Native American Resource Center at American River College. It's so nice to be here. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Professor Valle, for encouraging me to do this today.
And so we'll go ahead and start with Ariana.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ariana Osuna. I'm a third-year undergraduate student here at UCLA. I'm majoring in political science with minors in Chicana Studies and American Indian Studies. I am from the Barona Band of Mission Indians, from the Kumeyaay Nation, as well as from the La Jolla Band of Listeño Indians. And I am also the vice president of our American Indian Student Association here, as well as the UCSA Seed Vice Chair.
Thank you, Ariana. Atzil?
Hello, everyone. Osio Aguado Gilehi. Hi everyone. My name is Alexis Asilisque Zaragoza. I am Cherokee, what people are known as Aniunwia, at least internally. And so very happy to be here. I previously served as a California Community College Board of Governors member, as well as a UC student regent. I was the second ever Native student regent, actually behind Jacqueline Ross, who's here in the call. And so, yeah, very happy to be here to represent some of the student voice.
Perfect. And so as you can see, we have some very strong perspectives. And as I mentioned before, I want them to start thinking about what it means being rooted in strength. And so starting with the first question is, can you share your experience accessing financial aid? And as a Native, individual, were there any challenges or barriers that you encountered along the way? And we'll go ahead and start with Atzil.
Sure, thank you. Well, a bit of background in terms of my education history is I started at community college, actually at Modesto Junior College. I'm in Modesto right now, so I'm back at home. And I transferred to UC Berkeley, finished out my dual degrees there. And then I actually went back to school recently to do my master's program of public policy at UC Berkeley. So I was able to also complete graduate school, which gives me an additional perspective. I see MJC in the chat, amazing. Yeah, so I've gone through basically I guess 3 tiers of education and dealing with financial aid in the midst of that. And I think that we've come a long way in the years that I've been in school, but there's definitely still a lot of problems, right? In terms of especially financial aid accounting for cost of living, basic needs. I know when I was in community college, there was a pretty big lack of basic needs centers and things like that. And a lot of the duty was kind of onto the student governments as well as the like different, whatever cultural centers that we had on the campuses to kind of help lift students up. When I transferred to Berkeley, there were more resources, but it was still very constrained, right? We oftentimes put a lot on our native faculty and staff to do kind of everything and hold up the world. So, you know, uh, they helped a ton, but I feel like as a native student, it feels like constantly trying to, running out of money, as mentioned before, and like applying for new money. I felt like I was constantly applying for scholarships and grants, and that sort of just never ended. And so, even through my master's, it was like that. So, yeah, lots of different issues, but I think the biggest thing is needing support for things outside of tuition, which includes cost of living.
And you bring up a really important part, is this over-reliance or over-dependence when it comes to Native faculty and student association. And so this perfectly pivots to Ariana, who is the vice president of the Student Association. So I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring in my perspective as well as like my members' perspective because obviously, um, for some context, UCLA last year, we used to have these retention and outreach projects. So our outreach projects, we had a full-time staff member who was Native, and then we had our student jobs along with it. And the same thing for our retention projects. And so our outreach projects would go to powwows, would go to local high schools to show that higher education is possible. And our retention projects would show that Native students are here and that they retain them for college. And so they offered counseling, not just like spiritual counseling, but also like academic counseling. We did workshops because I used to work for this retention project last year. And so since like the DEI budget cuts here at UCLA, they completely wiped this whole program. And so now this year I have seen a really big struggle with our Native students with the retention aspect. With classes, we would like offer tutoring for classes. We would offer like support with like enrolling in classes because enrollment here at UCLA is kind of crazy. And so without these retention and outreach projects, we completely lost all of our financial stability because we had students working for these projects. And so after, like, now these students don't have the income anymore. So now I've seen a lot of our students scramble to find jobs, scramble to have money to like live as a college student, especially here in LA. It's very expensive. And so I think that was a big loss in our community here at UCLA, is not having those like financial jobs that secure us, because a lot of our members were pretty small. And so we all pretty much had jobs at these projects because they're pretty much like, they were for us. And so that was a really big loss in our community. And yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Ariana. And I want to pass it over to Xochitl, because Xochitl recently is going to be transferring to Sac State from ARC. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about your perspective.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, it's very difficult and challenging in a sense that I never had financial aid literacy, I guess I would say, 'cause I am coming from a first generation family, so I didn't know how to read my financial aid package or anything like that. And then when I went to financial aid at school, they weren't very much help. They didn't answer the questions I needed. But that's also, luckily, we have the Native Center here at American River College because I had Professor Vi take me through it step by step, and like he made sure that I fully understand it before I accepted anything. And I think a lot of students, we have to go through our Native centers or our Native staff because they feel comfortable with them. And while we do appreciate all of that, how come financial aid doesn't have the understanding as Native students that we need to understand it a little bit more, because we are coming from first generation. We don't know a lot in a sense, but I think that's very difficult. And I just feel sometimes like when with all of our students, all of them come to us for help with their homework, help with tutoring, just help with them because they don't know or they don't feel safe with their professors to ask the questions that they want to.
And you bring up a really important thing. Some, thematic words that are coming to me is Ariana said spiritual counseling, Sochi is saying the safety component, right? And so with this webinar, the heart of it being rooted in strength, I want to now bring it to this other question of culturally responsive financial aid support. And what did culturally responsive financial aid support look like for you when you were actively a student, and also your role that you have now as you are supporting other Native students in your role? And I'll start off with Atsil.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that, one of the important things that I think right now we're sort of, I mean, obviously losing politically, but, something that has been going away that I think will be, I want to say it won't be difficult and then it'll be easy to bounce back. But, obviously as resources at the universities are constrained, uh, who knows what we'll be able to bring back. But sort of this idea of having culturally responsive financial aid and systems to support students. I think when I first entered college, one, I feel like the conversation around Native students was almost non-existent. Oftentimes when I was in spaces doing advocacy, I don't know, it just wasn't like there was a huge support system there or people who were also doing advocacy in this work that I at least saw, right? And so it wasn't really until I came to Berkeley and there was a huge community that I had to rely on and I could actually see the issues as not just being a like minority or BIPOC issue, but it's like, oh, these are also very specific to Native students, right? And like understanding like, there's more people outside of me that are dealing with this issue, which means that it's a widespread problem. And so I think that, being able to help mentor students take extra time and like a lot of that patience just didn't exist. I think it exists a bit more now where, people are trained in having culturally responsive services when you go to a financial aid counselor or when you go to an admissions counselor or you're trying to find classes. I think you've been able in recent years to start to see, more Native people in those positions or at least BIPOC people. And it is a little easier, right? They're patient. They will take their time. They'll help explain it to you. They understand the pressure that you're under as a first generation student or somebody coming from this background. But I think as we start to lose a lot of the money for those services and they start to get devalued, I am worried about continuing to have those things available because they're extremely important for getting students to even want to be there in the first place, but also to keep them there and make sure they're taken care of. And, these things should not be a thing that constrains students and makes them want to leave. It should be something that helps keep them here. And so making sure that we're, doing that in the right way is very important.
Thank you. Yeah, you bring up some really good points of just what the current space looks like and what the future could potentially look like. And so I'd love to pass it over to Ariana for your thoughts.
Yeah, I think for the future, I think just having very like, excuse me, I think just like funding for Native students should be concrete and not something that can easily be taken away. Like for our like retention and outreach projects, even our even just like our center and our department, like just things that are easily cut, like should not be this should not even be like that for Native students because it just the instability for us, it's quite terrible. I think the culturally responsive, I think they should just have like stable job opportunities for Native students, ensuring that support systems are not easily taken away. Um, I think like long-term investment in like Native student success should be a priority within these institutions. And so they should have culturally specific programs that increases accessibility and funding for our Native students. And just honestly, for the end goal is just to listen to your Native students. I think that's super important, especially being such a small percentage on these institutions. We are often like overlooked. And so I think just listening to us is like honestly a big step in the future.
That's beautiful, listening, being able to use our senses in that way. And so, Sochil, I'd love to kind of gather some of your thoughts on this too.
I would agree with everything, but it's just like just listening to us and like making sure that we have a voice and not letting people, in a sense, talk over us, saying like, oh, this is what it is. In reality, we know what we're trying to talk about, but we just can't express it because we don't understand like what it is in a sense. But I think it's just having, whether we have like the financial aid office or what whoever handles our financial aid, have them understand essentially just where we're coming from. I think that's really important, just like having them aware of like how to support our Native students in mind. I think that's very important because we're having students who are afraid to go to financial aid because they don't understand how to do it, and like how can we help them if they are afraid of going to financial aid, going to get help when help is never really given to us. We're not really in their mind in a sense.
Yeah, thank you. And so we're going to close it off with this final question for the three of you all. And as we go back to the heart of this webinar, Rooted in Strength, I want to ask for your advice, pretending if you were going to talk to yourself when you first started college, or to any of the participants that are here today that identify as Indigenous, entering, the higher education space. What is one advice that you have for them? And we'll go ahead and start with Sochi.
One piece of advice I would definitely get is just finding your community. It's very important to like feel like you're welcome in a space like higher education, whether that's like a native center, you find mentors or just students, like having like student clubs, like we have NASU, so like Native American Student Union, just having that place to connect so you don't feel alone is very important, I would say. And also just don't be afraid to ask questions, whether you have professors or just someone in a center or just have a native person to talk to. I feel like that would be okay. Thank
Not
you.
being afraid to ask. Yes, thank you, Sochi. And so we'll go over to Ariana.
Yeah, I think I would say the same thing is find your excuse me, is to find your community, especially coming to UCLA is such a big institution. It's very overwhelming when you first get admitted as a freshman. I looking thinking back, I'm like, oh my goodness. So definitely I would suggest like incoming or just like my past self is to find your community, rely on the faculty. Our native faculty here is amazing. So just rely on them, rely on your community, rely on your peers because they have the same experiences as you and they have the same background as you. And so I think just having that sense of community while being so far away from home is like a really nice thing. And so, yeah, I would say find your community.
Finding our community, yes. And so we'll close it off with Atsil.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, we're big on community, as you can tell. I think that really echoes exactly how important it is. But yeah, I would say kind of similarly, it is so much easier when you have even just one person next to you. And sometimes, in different circumstances, it might look different. In some cases, the community is already built and there's a native center and there's faculty and people in place to help you. In other cases, I think back to when I was at MJC, I think I was one of the founding members of the Native American Club, and there were four of us. And, you know, I went to MJC this year for the MJC powwow, and it was massive. And I was just sitting here like awestruck at how big it's gotten, which was amazing to see, right? And so, in some cases, you have to be the person that kind of spearheads that or creates it. But also, even if it's finding just one faculty member, one person that understands you, one person even just from your tribe that can help you through the process, or maybe it's a community of Indigenous folks that are not from here, for example. Any kind of community that you can find, even if it is not necessarily perfect or already created, I would say just, try to find it, create it yourself if you're able to, and just find at least one person to help you through the process, because it'll make it so much easier to have someone who understands the way that you're feeling.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all three for just sharing your perspective. Your voices really remind me that students are just not the recipients of support, but they're leaders, knowledge holders, change makers, as Asil mentioned, being the one spearheading to have the first Native American club. And that is real. I remember when I first went to college, these conversations, even what we had, was not really the norm. And I also want to note, I love to see the resources being shared in the chat. Thank you so much. And so we're now going to transition into our featured panel with campus leaders who are actively shaping what these systems look like from the institutional side. So if we can go to the next slide. And I'd love to welcome the three panelists. I'm going to have them each introduce themselves, their name, and who are they representing, and a little bit of what their work is. So we'll go ahead and start with Professor Valle.
Ewi, tui ke otana tua lios in Chaniabu ke chimalea huemia inepo uya matame Jesuale. I'm Professor Jesus Valle. I'm Yaki Carrizo. He's led a Apache, and I'm just really, happy to be here. It makes my heart feel good to see you all and to be able to like help out, in some way for our students. I'm the coordinator of the Native American Resource Center at American River College, and we've been opening the doors to our center now for about 25 years. And so there's a lot of work involved in that. And as Kat was saying, a lot of love. We do it for the survivance of our tribal people. So I'll say that much, kind relatives.
Thank you, Professor Ryan. We'll go over to Jacqueline.
Opumi Kontowi Ka'awi Jacqueline Ross. Good to be here with everybody. I work at UC Davis in undergraduate admissions, and I've been very fortunate to work with students for almost my whole career and at the campus that I attended as an undergrad as well. And really pleased to be here with you today. This is a critical, essential conversation, and I look forward to hearing the good words from my colleagues, and I appreciate what all the students and alums just shared as well. We need to talk about money more. We shouldn't be afraid of it. It shouldn't be a subject of shame or fear. So I'm really pleased to be invited in to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And now I'll hand it over to Dr. Reed.
Hello, my name is Annette Reed, and I am an enrolled member of the Tolowa Dini Nation. I'm also at Sac State, and I've been there 28 years. I've been a professor, director of Native American Studies, chair of ethnic studies, and now the dean of Weletu Native American College, which is the first Native American college at a state institution. I wanted to say we're not a tribal college, although I want to stand in my strong support of tribal colleges. But we're a bit different because we are at a public institution. And I really wanted to thank all of the other panelists and also the students today and the organizers for all of your work that you've done and for all sharing all of your thoughts. This is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so now we're just going to dive into the first question. Some theme that we heard that was coming up from the student and alum panelists was this need for culturally responsive methods, right, as a form of support. And so I wanted to ask, where do you see some of the biggest financial gaps for Native students? And how does your institution or your resource center, beyond traditional aid, address those barriers in a culturally responsive way? And so we'll go ahead and start with Professor Valle.
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I'm sitting here kind of synthesizing, processing. I really appreciated the student voices. And what really comes to my mind is how do we, retribalize our institutions? How do we focus on place-based approaches? Several years ago, a bunch of years ago now, the institution here commissioned, we did a disproportionate impact report to tribal students. And the hugest outcome of the study was we realized that we were not functioning within a frame of sovereignty, right? We were functioning under a race-based frame, and the institution itself was considering us and thinking of us, right? AIAN students within a racial frame. And so just by pushing the institution to adopt a sovereignty frame, through all aspects, it changes the questions that you can ask within the financial aid bubble. I think that we hear a whole lot about kind of pull yourself. I'm just gonna be really, really real here, real honest. It's like the burden gets placed on the students, right? It's great to find the person who can help you. It's great to seek it out and all of that. But this system across the state is vast, and what if you don't have those people? It places all the onus on the students to kind of, pull their way through, instead of looking at financial aid as a legacy colonial system, a fragmented one at that, right? And so despite all the best efforts towards it, there's not a holistic place-based rethink of the relationship of tribal peoples to their institution and thus to the support that that really comes with the land, right? These land grant university systems. So I think there's a deeper moral thread that we need to rethink and consider. At the same time, yes, supporting the students within the current frame, doing the culturally responsive support as we can and how we can, right? Like at ARC, we have our Native Center, we have staff, we have a huge MMIW event today that we're getting ready for. We have lots of stuff, but it's still not enough when we pull the numbers. The utilization by AIN students of financial aid, just applying, it was jaw-dropping. I did it last year. I pulled the numbers like, wow, like 70% of our American Indian students haven't applied for financial aid. And that was despite all of the stuff that we do. And I'm like, okay, so we're not quite, getting it here, and the institution isn't quite getting it.
Right. Thank you, Professor Vaya. You're bringing up a very important point where you can't just put a band-aid onto something that has so many holes, right? And so I'm going to hand it over to Jacqueline to continue this conversation.
Yes, those are some really excellent points. We can't assume, even though we have brilliant students coming into all of our institutions, we can't assume that people are good with money. Some of us haven't had it, and some of us have never had to worry about it. And the combination of either of those starting places and coming to university without your parents there, right, without your community there, creates some natural opportunities for conflict. But I also want to take the tack that we have here at our campus somewhat in how to respond to that is to be really open with students about identifying where the gaps are for each of us personally. And I would love it if students could come and say, I really don't know how to handle money in this context yet. What do I need to do? So we do some work to empower students in the areas of financial literacy, things like having people track their spending, because especially if you come from an area where you've actually had parents that, give you some money and you have what we call walking around money and you've never really kept track of what you spend, that's a pretty useful exercise. Like every coffee, every, electronic thing that you do, all that, what's going on with your Venmo and all these things that students have to really help people get a handle on spending. We have a lot of people that have never had a budget before or never had to work with a budget. And then with the overlay of financial aid, like very official money that comes with that, how do you keep track of all that stuff? So one of the things our institution is doing generally with financial aid, we have a really good financial aid office and responsive crew. We also work on this at the Native Center. And we invite students to come in and have quieter conversations, where people can have some vulnerability about money and say, I really don't know how to handle it. I'm really not sure, or I got this credit card and now I'm in a little bit of trouble because people don't know how credit works either. So those are some of the things that we've been doing as far as filling in gaps. We also do some community workshops, but I can say we're pretty privileged if we ask financial aid to come over and give all of us a walkthrough, or if we're hosting counselors that work with Native students or first gen students, whoever we need, they will actually come over and walk through it with us. They will tell us what student financial aid letter components look like and really help us. Financial aid, for good or bad, is one of these things that changes a lot, can change with every administration, as we're seeing now. So actually, even though I've been working in the university for some time, I need a refresher also. So I completely sympathize with students that find this a little bewildering. We have to get freshened up on our information too, and that's incumbent on us as staff people to do that. And I'll tell some stories later, but that's the basics of my first response. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jacqueline. I mean, I think you bring up some key points that we even heard in the student and alumni panel, right? First gen and just that component of the lack of financial literacy. Thank you. And so I'd like to hear from Dr. Reed, some of your thoughts.
Hello. I want to echo everything that's said so far. And when we start looking at the gaps in financial aid, I think that there's sometimes these assumptions with larger society that Native people have money, and especially California Native people. And I'd like to dispel that stereotype because it's very painful for people who come from areas that are rural areas and economically has been disadvantaged and such like that. And then for the assumption is they don't need anything, they don't need help. And I've heard that even with students telling me that in class, they've had that said to them by other, students. So that myth is out there. And I think that our students need a lot of help when they come in with financial aid and economic awareness. And so part of that comes from having financial aid come over. Like we have preview day and we do have admissions and financial aid there. I know that other institutions do the same thing. We at Waletu, they're doing, I'll talk a little bit more about cohorted classes and what I'll let to in a little bit, but they do have cohorted classes. So one of the most important classes I saw for the folks that needed a math class and yet, they weren't going to take that math class during their major was one on personal finance. Because I agree with what Jacqueline said, a lot of people come in and have never had that responsibility. I remember when I first was hired at Sac State, I didn't know what a pension system was. I didn't know how that worked. I didn't know what individual retirement or anything. And when I first started college, even years and years ago, I didn't know what financial aid was. And so that, was a whole process in learning. And I wanted to mention about, that we talked about numbers, and that was one of the questions. That's also one of the things that really get me within, and I would say that this is probably at a lot of institutions, is that Native people are such low numbers. We have to focus on all the larger numbers of people. But then people don't realize why Native people are not, attending universities in large numbers, and that we've been colonized within our own lands. We've gone through a genocide. We've gone through forced removal, forced assimilation, removal to boarding schools, which was not a good experience for many Native people. All of this has led to a decimation of population, insecurity, historical trauma. I mean, there's also at times a distrust of institutions and such like that at times. So, how do we, as Native people at institutions, be able to bridge those gaps with the students and with the community? And hopefully, when students come in, start working with them, and it might be a one-on-one. It might be even a lot, having them be aware of resources. If somebody sees students, all of a sudden, a student who usually is there in class and start missing a class, to pull them in and ask why, what's going on. And so then, we had this happen, and it was somebody that was choosing between, getting diapers for a baby or gas money. And so, how do we recognize that? And then I sent them to the Basic Needs Center at Sac State, where all of a sudden, which I think the food pantry and Basic Needs Center is absolutely fantastic, because they're able to go over there and get toilet paper, paper towels, diapers, children's clothing, etc. I mean, there's a whole list. I won't go through the whole list, but at least those things hurt, in addition to making people aware of financial aid. What other resources are there in the Native community and larger community that they can access, both on and off campus? So I think having them aware, and also not having them feel embarrassed for doing that. I remember when I graduated years ago from my BA degree, and I was about ready to get my first teaching job, right away. I didn't have enough clothes for 5 days a week, that were professional clothes for a classroom. So I needed to go to the Economic Development Center, that was a Native Economic Development Center, to find those resources. And they helped me, with finance to be able to provide that gap. And I think that's that's also a component on it is, yes, the ones at the institutions and the financial aid, both nationally, statewide, but also finding those other things that will make a patchwork quilt to be able to help students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. And you already started kind of encompassing into what I want to tailor into. You started sharing stories and examples. And so I'm curious to see, how do Native student voices influence decision making on your campus, your resource center? Particularly, yes, with financial aid, student services, but even program design. And if, you're comfortable doing so, please share an example or a couple of examples. And I'll go ahead and start with Professor Valle.
Well, we have a lot, we have quite a bit of native student voice. We have 150 AIAN students here, and we see a good chunk of those within the Native American Resource Center. And we try to really elevate the voice, let the student voices be kind of at the front. But within that, as folks have been speaking and connected to it, is the idea of financial aid as like, you know, as resource gathering, right? Like in the traditional sense of helping ourselves, of like self-determining, right? Some of this is helping students. A lot of what we do within our course cohort sequence, I teach Native Studies and Native Lit, is building self-esteem. The K through 12 system has been constructed to break us down and strip us of identity and culture and sovereignty, including personal sovereignty. So financial aid as building back self-esteem that we're worthy, right? And so the elevation of student voice sometimes it takes time, it takes trust, it takes relationship building, certainly, and then even getting out of the bubble of the safety of the Native American Resource Center, right? And just walking over to financial aid brings back for a lot of people traumas and triggers of standing in institutional lines and of being, being disrespected at the desk, right, in front of a long line of people, DMV type stuff, like like just this bureaucracy of paperwork. And again, I'm trying to also shift the burden to the system, right? The reform of the system, kind of a rethink of a cradle to career seamlessness, that it can be done. I mean, it obviously can be done. Information systems are getting very good, right? I think that our students want less stress in their lives, have a lot of stress in their lives, and the path of least resistance for them most of the time is that which they've been conditioned to believe is the safest, which is you put your head down, you go to work, and you pay for what you can. And if you can't pay for stuff, then you just get another job. Our students have like 2 or 3 jobs all at the same time. Um, and we guide them, we show them, hey, try this, look at this, look at this. But in their minds, they're doing a time calculation, like, is that really going to pencil out, to my benefit? Is I have this much time and I can make this much money working, and the financial aid calculus is don't know where it's going to go. So I think that, campus, we've been very good to have Lisa Cardoza as our college president, really responsive, really supportive. But there's definitely lots of work, creating liaisonships, relationships, creating listening sessions with financial aid. Michelle Willis has been very good. When you get a hold of a human being, right, that's where things really start to happen for our students.
Thank you, Professor Valle. That humanization is really important when it comes to advancement. Thank you. And so I want to hand it over to Jacqueline for your thoughts.
Yeah, so we do several things that I think have been very helpful at getting at what students need and what they voice and what they suggest. At our Native Center, we have a community breakfast once a month, and sometimes very deliberately administrators are invited in to come and just sit with students and have waffles. And that is very helpful for not so much for food security, because there's other really good consistent measures for food security, but there's something about the family coming in once a month that's really, really good. And that has led also to another very healthy habit, which is just sitting and listening to the students casually, not with like a focus group or a charrette or anything like that, but just sitting down and doing bead work with them, or do very open eavesdropping when they're sitting talking to each other and counseling with each other, because you really hear what concerns are. And most of the time I don't feel compelled to chip in, but every once in a while, then I can go back and say, well, I heard this today. We have students that are worried about XYZ. What can we create? Also, we are very fortunate to have space. And so space is being lent to students for really good ideas that they come up with on their own. So a few years ago, we had a poets and songwriters group that was kind of born from students, and the student graduates, that club goes away, something else comes in. Right now, there's a Native-led book club, right? So it again creates family time, very low cost entertainment and connection time. We have one student she runs a neurodivergent craft circle. So they come in periodically and just do something. And I'm always amazed at like all these high-powered majors and everything that we have. Sometimes what students really crave is just sitting down and making something. And so they do that too. And I've noticed that in the ARC Center as well, the makerspace, just providing that, giving people a way because it really responds to the creativity and the need to kind of get out of your head so much and get your hands moving, whole body work. So that goes on as well. There are more formalized mechanisms. There's a chancellor's committee where Native students sit on and can advise. But we also have elders that are welcome to come in, and they do. We have a lot of casual conversations. We have a lot of community events and very good connection between the Native American Studies program and the general community on campus. And all those help facilitate really deep listening and fairly quick responses to needs that come up for students, financial and otherwise.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I think something that's really beautiful to hear, as Professor Valle beautifully put it, is, when we get outside of that safe space within our resource center and kind of the authenticity coming through those casual conversations. Thank you. And so I'd love to hear, Dr. Reed, your thoughts on this.
For years, we've had a long history at Sac State of working with Native students. There have been Native professors, and part of it is Native professors who are very active within community. And I think that has been built upon to create the Estacama Center, which is the Native American Resource Center, and Willettu Native American College. Both of them are right next door to each other, and so we can easily go back and forth and work very easily together. The building in back of us is where Native American Studies is. And so when we're talking about listening to students, we have several different mechanisms, of course, because we have a space. Students are there every day, so they're in the conference room, they're in the larger room studying, they're coming in and out of our offices, having meetings of different types. They're being tutored by, we have Dr. Jaime Fuentes. He's Hopland Pomo, and he has his PhD in microbiology, immunology. So he's tutoring a lot of the science and math students in those classes. So I think that helps, but also we just opened last fall for Willettu. So we did do an assessment. And so we asked the students to put in writing and also formally by video, what their basically first semester experience was. So one of the things that we heard was that we had a couple dinners last fall, but they wanted more of those. And Jacqueline's absolutely right about students like getting together, and sharing food. So we have a once a month now dinner, that's directly after the class, and they have a class together with a cohort. And so 4 to 5:15. So dinner starts at 5:15. So automatically you have, over 30 students right there so that they don't have to make an extra trip, to actually come and have a meal together. And then having having faculty mentors. We have 8 faculty mentors who are Native, and each of them have about 5 students. So again, that's a way to listen to students when they meet with them individually or meet with them as a group. And I think these have been helping. Of course, there needs to be more. There needs to be, more resources. And just to throw this out there was a climate survey done and conducted in 2018, and kind of the climate, how students, faculty, and staff felt on campus. And the 2 groups that felt like they were the least welcome on university campus were Black and Native American. And so with that's why the current president, President Wood, when he came in as president, wanted to create the Black Honors College and then also Willettu Native American College, so that those students who felt like they had the least resources and the least attention, that they could, have a place that they go and felt, and I'm sending into your next question about belonging.
Yes. And so just given with time, I'm going to close off with this final question. I am so appreciative for this deep wisdom that you all have shared. But As Dr. Reed mentioned, belonging. This question is going to surround around belonging. And what does belonging look like for Native and Indigenous students on your campus or in your resource center, or even actively when you're outside of that safe space, as Professor Vaya put it, and you're in the world? What does that belonging look like? And are there any last, pieces of wisdom that you would like to share? I'll start off with Professor Vaya.
Okay, that's the word belonging. Now that's really interesting. A while back our campus had put um, these signage right around the campus that said you belong here with many different, profiles and pictures around the campus. And I had to really look at that. I tend to look at things very critically, right? And I had to look at that and think, well, you can't really tell tribal people we belong here. We know we're here, right? We are the land here. And so belonging is inherent for tribal peoples within a sovereignty and place-based frame. And it's these institutions that are sitting on top of us, right? And the ecology. So within that reformation of these colonial institutions, we've created, yes, a safe space, a bubble. Like we think of it as a refuge or a sanctuary for the tribal students. Um, I appreciate that Jacqueline mentioned the makerspace because we do have a tremendous makerspace. We're constantly making ribbon items, moccasins, medicine bags. We have a big drum. We have traditional items, and then clapper sticks. Like folks bring in their tribal realities to be in community with the other students. We have weekly feeds. Every single Wednesday, we have like 30 or 40 of our students, native students, have a big feed. Every Wednesday at noon, every Wednesday we drum. We have our cohort sequence. Now we have a sovereignty garden that's developing right outside the door to grow not only food, but traditional medicines. So belonging is about walking into a school space, right, that has for the last K through 12 traumatized you, right? Even K through 12 Indian Ed programs, same thing. There's a little bubble of safety within that. And then seeing folks who get you, who understand you, who know you, who are not going to say stupid things and make you feel less than. So we've created also a trained cohort of applied allies to tribal citizens as a professional development sequence, because we understand that there are a lot of good folks on the campus who have the desire and the will to stand in relationship with tribal folks at this historical juncture. So there are many mechanisms, right? Many models that we employ.
Thank you, Professor Vaya. And so I'll hand it over to Jacqueline.
Yes, I will. I will agree with all of that Professor Vaya just said, and add from my observation, I feel like students are really engaging and feeling like they belong when they come into the community space and they feel the calmness, they feel the serenity, they feel the security of that space. They don't have to come often, but when they come in and you see their shoulders kind of relax, I know that something really good is happening while they're with community there. They can also be inactive in other spaces. They don't have to come to the native space in particular, but we don't want them detached, right? We want them engaged somewhere to find their folks somewhere. And that could be at the 24-hour radio station, or it could be at the craft center, or it could be with another center that answers to their heritage, whatever it might be. I feel like our students belong when they are comfortable asking questions and hearing the answers. Very important, that they know how to ask for help, and that they also learn to be appreciative of that, because that's also part of connecting with a larger campus community. It feels really good to say, hey, one of your students came in today, and they were so polite and they were really direct about what they needed. And that's different than I saw them 2 years ago. It's amazing to hear that kind of story from people. And then finally, if they're learning about themselves and learning about other people, that's a really strong sense of belonging. That's a manifestation of belonging. And like Jesus was saying, they have been through a lot by the time that they come to us, and they're doing something very brave in many cases of even embarking on this journey away from home, putting themselves through this again. So when we can become family to them on the campuses, it's beautiful, and it's a huge sacred duty as well.
That's very beautifully said. I'll hand it over to Dr. Reed for our last moments, our last sentiments.
Yes, I think it's really important when we look at this to what we're doing. I guess we're trying, and like I said, we're brand new this year. So we're trying to, it will let to, and we are focusing on tribal leadership. But we want our students to be able to see themselves in these positions because they can major in any area that they are, brought into at Sac State. And then they go through some classes together. And I had a student at the end of last year, like I said, I did a survey, and she said that for her, belonging was not to be only accepted, but to have being Native normalized within the space. That it becomes something that you walk in and wonder if you're going to be accepted or not. You don't have to do that. You are already, it's normal to have Native people and Native activities and cultural activities. And then part of it is students who are saying that they really like it, that also when we look at leadership, to think of service, to the community. And so you'll see students out there at Native American Day at the state capitol or the parade, or doing something even for elders and veterans within our own space, to give them gifts, because Native people were extremely giving people. And so giving gifts is our way of expressing that appreciation that also Jacqueline said one way of doing that, or doing things for other people. And so uh, I really appreciate, being asked to be here today, and I appreciate the voices of everybody that has spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. And so we're going to go on to the next slide. We actually have some photos from the Walitu College. Dr. Reed was so gracious to share us some slides, which will be shared with each of you all in the post-webinar email follow-up, just to promote more resources and to share that. And so going to the next slide. As we close the panelist section for today, I want to return to the heart of this webinar, Rooted in Strength. Today, we heard from Native Indigenous students and leaders in the institutional space who discussed that navigating systems can be complex and frustrating and at times exclusionary. But we also heard something stronger. We heard that community exists, support exists, and solutions exist. And when the institutions, when higher ed, choose to listen, partner, and lead with cultural humility, real change happens. And so I'm going to go through these next two slides really quickly, but this will also be shared with you since, we're a little short on time. But overall, just a quick summary is that financial aid must be paired with culturally responsive support. We cannot put Band-Aids onto a, water bottle that has so many holes. No, we need to change the water bottle. And so basic needs are student success issues. And so the next slide. There are like fundings, on the institutional, state, federal level, but our call to action is simple. We need to advocate for Native students. We need to ask better questions and build stronger relationships. And the fact that we were able to basically use all this time just in dialogue shows that there's more conversations that need to be had. So on to the next slide, just the last minute that I'll have you. We do have some CSAC reminders. So go ahead and, visit our CSAC website for resources such as the CADA for mixed families, and also toolkits that highlight this monthly's, student focus with Native and Indigenous students, as well as next month. Feel free to attend our free Train for Trainer or Cash for College websites. We also encourage you to sign up for our CSAC listserv to receive the latest communications. And also feel free to track the FAFSA and CADA submission rates on the Race to Submit dashboard. Next slide. We do have two upcoming events in May. We have the May Commission meeting, which is a place for you to be able to actively advocate as we have public hearing or public notice or public comment there in the commission meetings. And then we also in May have another, important and humbling conversation called Opening Doors, Advancing Asian American and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander student, success through financial aid equity, and having that conversation. So feel free to join us there. And so last slide. I'd love to just thank you all for joining us today. I hope you all are able to take deep breaths and are able to reflect on the conversation we had today, as this is only the beginning of what's to come. And I also hope that you are able to connect with the sun today and you're able to hug them. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.